It was a Tuesday, trash day. I remember because I had just dragged the bins back to the side of the garage. The plastic wheels made that hollow clatter against the driveway, the kind of sound that doesn't register unless you're alone with it. It was late September. A thin film of leaves had started collecting near the storm drain. I remember thinking I'd need to rake soon. Inside, Lily was scraping her fork across her plate like it offended her. The sound grated against the silence. Nick had one leg propped up on the chair beside him, like it was his goddamn living room, and I was lucky to be seated there. We were eating rotisserie chicken, store-bought. Ashley had picked it up after her part-time shift at the salon. I'd offered to cook, but she waved it off like always. I think she didn't want me to take credit for dinner. Then Lily said it. "Mom," she began, not looking at me. Even if he disappeared, nothing would change. He's just filling space. She didn't even flinch, didn't even wait for a reaction. She said it like she was reading from a weather report. I looked at Ashley. Her eyes stayed fixed on her plate. A sip of water, a slow chew, not even a frown, not even a raised brow. Nick chuckled. Not a laugh, not a burst. Just a smug exhale through his nose, as if to say she's not wrong. And I sat there, chewing through chicken I had paid for in a house I maintained, under a roof I reshingled myself 2 winters ago. In that moment, I realized what I was to them. Not a man, not a father, not even a presence. I was furniture, filler, a warm body in a photo they'd crop later. They say men leave, but some of us stay and we get erased anyway. Let me back up. My name's Thomas. I'm 51. I live in Waukesha, just outside Milwaukee. I've been married to Ashley for 7 years. Stepfather to Nick, 24 now, and Lily, 22. Their real dad, Darren, skipped town when they were toddlers. Not legally vanished, just spiritually. He pops in every few years like a bad seasonal cold. Posts pictures from Bali or Peru on Facebook, sends a text on Christmas, maybe a phone call on their birthdays if the time zones line up. No child support, no visits. Just this romantic ghost of a man who never stayed long enough to fail them. I met Ashley when the kids were in high school. She was managing a local salon part-time, trying to hold it together. Nick was already moody, testosterone and YouTube bravado. Lily was guarded, polite but sharp. I didn't try to be their dad. That was never the goal. I was just there. Support. Stability. The one who kept the water hot and the fridge full. When Ashley and I got married, we agreed. She'd stay part-time at the salon to be around more for the kids. I was doing well as a structural engineer, independent contracts, good referrals. I paid the mortgage, the health insurance, the car notes, the tuition, the phones, the groceries, the spring breaks. I even bought Nick a used Ford Fusion when he got accepted into college. It wasn't flashy, but it was clean and ran smooth. He never said thank you. None of them did, not really. The first few years were full of small courtesies. Thanks for dinner, or appreciate the ride. But they faded fast. Somewhere between junior year and graduation, everything I did became routine. Then it became invisible. That happens, you know. You give long enough and people stop seeing the giving. They just see what's missing when it stops. I remember the shift like a slow leak. First, it was small things. I'd fix the dishwasher and nobody noticed. I'd get the car emissions tested and Lily would still complain about driving it. I'd reschedule my work calls to attend Knicks games, and he'd barely nod when I showed up. No one asked me how my day was. No one ever did, really. Once, I asked Lily to chip in on utilities, just a small monthly portion while she was home from college for the summer. Her answer? "You're a grown man asking students for money?" Ashley laughed. She's joking, but I wasn't. And I wasn't laughing. It wasn't just the money. It was the principle. The way her tone snapped like I was begging, like I had asked her for a kidney instead of a $50 Venmo. I realized then, they didn't just not appreciate me, they resented the idea that I might want anything back. That's when the exhaustion set in. Not physical. Deeper than that. Emotional fatigue. You give, you carry, you show up, and you're treated like a temp. Disposable. When Lily made that comment at dinner, "He's just filling space," something shifted in me. Not anger. Not sadness. just a sudden, cold clarity. Like when you're looking for your keys and realize you never had them to begin with. She didn't say it to provoke me. She said it because she believed it. Because to her and to Nick and maybe even to Ashley, I was just background noise. The man who stood in the doorway while the real father haunted the walls. And Ashley. Her silence spoke louder than anything. She didn't correct Lily. Didn't soften the blow. She just let it hang in the air like smoke from a fire no one wanted to admit was still burning. I spent the rest of that night in the garage. Not doing anything, really. Just sitting there, listening to the water heater click and hum. Staring at the workbench covered in dust and forgotten screws. I thought about the last 7 years. The birthdays I'd planned. The Christmas lights I'd strung alone in the snow. The mornings I'd driven to the hardware store before dawn because the toilet was leaking and no one else knew how to fix it. I thought about how nobody ever asks the stepfather how he's doing. We're supposed to be grateful. We got a family without diapers and tantrums. We skipped the mess. But that's the lie. We didn't skip anything, we just inherited the fallout. The broken bonds, the unresolved grief, the comparisons to ghosts who never had to do the hard parts. Darren didn't have to pay for braces or tuition or groceries. He didn't have to say no to Lily when she wanted another piercing. He didn't have to deal with Nick's failed classes or Lily's panic attacks. He got to be the exotic memory, the cool dad with surfboards and sunburns. And me? I got to be the man they blamed when Wi-Fi went out. I started keeping a spreadsheet. Every expense from the past 12 months. Not to prove a point, not yet, just to see it in black and white. $92,476. That's what I had paid in 1 year. Groceries, insurance, car repairs, dental work, gas, utilities, textbooks, rent for their off-campus housing. And not once, did any of them say, "Thank you, Thomas." I know what some people would say. They're young. They don't understand. They'll appreciate it later. But when is later? After I'm dead? After their real father gets another photo op at their wedding? After I've paid off their student loans in silence? There's a moment every man reaches when he realizes the house he's building was never his to live in. He was just the scaffolding. Temporary. Meant to be torn down once the walls were strong enough without him. Lily's words made it official. He's just filling space. That's what I was to them, a placeholder. And that night I began to wonder if maybe it was time to clear the space. July heat settles differently on a man who's tired. Presses into the skin, sits heavy behind the ribs. That Saturday, it clung to me like accusation. I'd spent 3 hours in the yard setting up for the cookout. String lights along the fence, charcoal stacked in a pyramid. The grill brushed clean until the steel shone. I bought the meat, the beer, the trays of fruit Ashley said would make the patio look nicer. I did the work the way I always did. Silently, reliably, invisibly. The sun was dropping when Nick wandered out with a can of beer he didn't ask permission for. Lily followed, carrying nothing but her phone. Ashley smiled like she was hosting a party she hadn't lifted a finger to prepare. I tried to let it wash off me. I tried to pretend I wasn't still hearing Lily's voice from that dinner weeks earlier. Even if he disappeared, nothing would change. That line had burrowed in and nested, building a kind of echo chamber inside my chest. I flipped the burgers. I seasoned the chicken. I made sure no one's drink emptied. I was the backbone, the engine, the scaffolding holding everything steady while the three of them leaned without noticing the strain. And for a moment I told myself I could keep doing it. A man convinces himself of many things if he repeats the lie softly enough. Then Nick raised his beer. He wasn't drunk. That would have been easier to excuse. No, he was stone sober, riding the confidence of a man who'd never had to pay for the chair he was sitting in. "Mom," he said loudly, loud enough for the neighbors to turn their heads. "Admit it. Any other guy would do this better, and probably be funnier too." Ashley smirked. "God help me." She smirked. Not a laugh. Not a correction. A small curve of the mouth that said she'd heard it, maybe even agreed with it, but wouldn't bother stepping between us. I didn't reply. I kept flipping the meat, feeling something inside me tilt. Not snap, just tip. Like a load-bearing beam cracking in the center. Slow, quiet, irreversible. Later that night, when the patio lights dimmed and the yard emptied, I sat at the dining table with my laptop. I didn't have a drink, didn't pace or breathe hard. I was calm, too calm. A man reaches a point where emotion drains out and leaves something clearer behind, the kind of clarity you only get in survival mode. I opened my expense spreadsheet. Every number stared back. Tuition, car insurance, Lily's phone bill, groceries, utilities, medical visits, holiday trips, gas money. I slipped into Nick's hand when he pretended he'd forgotten his wallet. 1 year totaled over $90,000. $90,000 for a man they said was just filling space. The sum wasn't what broke me. What broke me was realizing I had given them a life they didn't even know they were living on credit. At 1:13 a.m., I logged into the joint account and moved my half into a separate savings account, one Ashley had no access to. I left her portion untouched. I wasn't out to punish her financially. Not yet. I simply reclaimed what was mine, the way a man might reclaim the coat he loaned someone who kept insisting they never needed it. Then I opened another tab and went through every autopay I'd set up across the years. Rent for Lily's off-campus apartment? Cancelled. Nick's car insurance? Cancelled. Their phone plans? Removed. I left the household utilities covered for 1 more month. A courtesy, not a commitment. The house felt too still, too quiet, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to decide whether I was staying or leaving. I packed a duffel bag, 2 weeks' worth of clothes, toiletries, my laptop, a folder with work contracts. No drama, no anger, just the essentials a man takes when he realizes the people he's feeding would prefer he starve quietly somewhere else. By dawn, I found a month-to-month rental in the next town. A small 1-bedroom near a hardware store and a diner that opened at 5. I signed the lease electronically. The place had beige carpeting and a view of a parking lot. Perfect. Imperfect. Mine. Before I left the house, I stood in the hallway looking at the framed photos. Vacations, birthdays, family dinners I paid for. In every picture, I saw the same thing. Me smiling in the background, always slightly apart, like a stand-in whose job was to never fully enter the frame. I wrote Ashley a message and left it on the kitchen counter. From now on, your grown kids manage their own lives. I'll step back until I know whether any of you actually valued what I did. No threats. No pleas. Just a line in the sand, firm and clean. When I drove away, the street looked the same as every morning. Sprinklers ticking, a neighbor walking his dog, the faint smell of wet pavement. Nothing in the world announced the shift, but I felt it. A quiet rupture, the kind that doesn't explode but erodes. At the apartment, I sat on the unfamiliar mattress and waited. Silence. Then the storm arrived. First came Lily, a dozen missed calls. Her phone bill hadn't gone through. She demanded answers like I was a customer service rep who'd wronged her personally. I didn't pick up. Next came Nick. A string of short, panicked texts. Insurance lapsed? What the hell, Thomas? Got pulled over. Fine is $240. Fix it. I didn't respond. By evening, Ashley called from a borrowed number. Her voice cracked on the 3rd sentence. The power company had sent a warning. Nick was furious. Lily was crying. She said she didn't understand what I was doing, why I would suddenly abandon them. Abandon. The word stung, not because it was true, but because it was the lie I knew they'd reach for. They needed me more than they ever admitted, and losing me felt like losing oxygen. I told her the truth, steady and unraised. I didn't abandon anyone. I hit pause. I stepped back from a role none of you believed I held. She said nothing. The silence tasted like old metal. When I ended the call, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, weightlessness. Not happiness. Just the removal of a burden I'd mistaken for a duty. And as nights settled over the small apartment, as cars passed outside on their way to places I no longer belonged, I let myself breathe in the emptiness. The first space I'd occupied that wasn't taken for granted. This wasn't running away. This was reclaiming the ground under my own feet. This was proof that I existed outside their negligence. Pause not for them. For me. The first week was quiet. Not peaceful, just muffled, like a hotel room 1 floor too far from the lobby. I worked during the day, ate microwave dinners, read manuals I'd already memorized. At night, I lay in the half-light of the apartment, listening to pipes hum through the walls. Felt like floating, not sinking, not climbing, just drifting. Ashley didn't call again. Not for 6 days. When she did, her voice had changed. Still soft, still careful, but thinner now, less sure of its power. She asked if I was coming home soon. I told her plainly I wasn't sure where home was anymore. She said the kids were struggling. Said Lily was stressed. Nick had missed work. Said she was trying her best. I asked her gently, "Why now? What do you mean? Why are you only noticing now what I carried?" She didn't answer, just breathed into the line until I hung up. That's when the emails started. Lily's came first. Subject line, "I'm sorry." 3 sentences. No flourish. I thought things just happened. That bills paid themselves, that groceries came from the air. Now I work 2 jobs and realize how much you did. I didn't get it. Now I do. I reread it 3 times before closing the tab. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I needed to know it wasn't just desperation. I needed to know it would stick. Nick came next. Not with words, with presence. He showed up outside my apartment 3 days later. No call. Just a knock. When I opened the door, he looked thinner. Not physically, but in the eyes. That hollowness that comes when a man's illusions are finally scraped down to the bone. He didn't bring excuses. Didn't stumble through justifications. He stood there like a tenant behind on rent. "I thought what you did was easy," he said. "You made it look easy. That was the problem." We sat on the porch steps. He didn't ask to come in. He didn't try to make it warm. We just sat, silence folding between us. I sipped coffee. He fidgeted with his hoodie strings. After a while, I told him, "Replaceable isn't the insult you thought it was. It just means you never noticed the labor. You only saw the roof, not the hands that held it up." He didn't argue, just nodded like a man who'd finally heard the cost of what he broke. The next day, I received another message, this time from the power company. Ashley hadn't paid. The warning was final. I didn't intervene. Let the lights go dark. Let them sit in the silence I've lived in for 7 years. I wanted to see what they'd do without me. Not to punish, to test. And they adapted. Lily got a second job. Barista in the mornings, front desk at a gym at night. She stopped posting selfies. Started packing lunches. Nick sold his Xbox. Paid back a friend he owed. Took public transit to work. No more Uber. Ashley went back to the salon full-time. She hadn't worked a real week in 5 years. Said her feet hurt after every shift. Said the new manager was younger than Lily. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just observed. This was what accountability looked like. Not apologies, not flowers, not forced dinners. Change. Real, inconvenient change. Still, Ashley hadn't come to me in person. She'd sent texts. A few calls. All surface. All tentative. Until October. She showed up at the apartment wearing that old green coat I bought her on our 3rd Christmas. The one she used to wear on cold date nights. She looked smaller in it now. "I miss you," she said. I stood aside. Let her in. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped between her knees like a student waiting for discipline. "They didn't mean it like that," she said. "You're taking it too hard." I turned, slowly, sat across from her. "They said I was replaceable," I said. "You stayed silent. Now they know how much replacement costs." Her face flinched. Not at the sentence, but at the truth in it. "They're kids," she said. "No," I corrected. "They're adults. Lily's 22. Nick's 24. If they're old enough to reject me as a father, they're old enough to fund their rejection." Ashley looked away. I softened. "I don't need them to love me," I said. "But I needed someone, anyone, to notice the toll." We sat in the stillness. Outside, the sky was gray. Traffic pulsed in the distance. It was the kind of quiet that invites honesty. "I got too comfortable," she whispered. "You made it so easy to lean on you that I forgot you were holding all the weight." I said nothing. She stood, walked toward the door. turned back. "I want to fix this," she said. "But I don't know how." I nodded once. "Start by fixing yourself. I'll be here when I see change. Not before." She didn't argue. She just left. Quietly. Like a guest who realized the room wasn't hers anymore. A week passed. Then another. I didn't move back. But the bills stopped coming. Ashley paid her own way. The kids too. The house kept standing because for the first time they were holding it up themselves. And I watched from a distance, detached, reserved, but awake. Because finally, the truth had been felt, not just spoken. They learned what life without me actually meant. And that, more than any apology, was the shift I'd been waiting for. Started small. Ashley sent a photo of Lily's pay stub. No caption. Just the numbers, hours clocked, taxes withheld, take-home earnings. I stared at it for a while, not because of what it said, but what it didn't. There was no request, no plea, just proof. A quiet submission that said, "We're trying." The next day, I received a transfer from Nick, $87. The note said, "Partial repayment for car insurance. More soon." I didn't reply, just stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. That weekend, I returned to the house. Not with boxes, not with forgiveness, just myself. A man with his own keys, standing on the porch of a structure he had once held up alone. Ashley opened the door like she had been rehearsing it all week. She didn't smile, didn't cry, just stepped aside to let me in. The furniture was the same. So was the smell, lemon cleaner, and a hint of burnt toast. But the atmosphere had changed. Heavier. A house finally aware of its own cost. Lily sat at the kitchen table with a laptop open. Receipts spread around her like a storm of accountability. Nick was fixing a shelf in the laundry room, one I'd asked him to repair years ago. No one said anything for the first few minutes. They just acknowledged my presence with nods. I didn't ask for more. That night, Ashley and I sat in the living room, the television on mute. She looked tired. Not worn out, just aged by truth. "I've been working full-time again," she said. "It's harder than I remember." I nodded. Work always feels harder when someone else used to carry it for you. She didn't argue, just leaned back, eyes closed. "I miss us," she said after a while. I didn't answer, because I didn't miss who I used to be in this house. The invisible provider, the background noise to their self-importance. If we were going to find something again, it had to be new. The next morning, I laid out terms. Not cruel, not cold, just clear. "I'll come home on weekends, for now." But things change. Ashley listened. The kids did too. "From now on, I cover my share. Not the whole. Not the extras. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not the silent partner in this family business. If I'm staying, I stay on new terms." Lily nodded. Nick looked at the floor. Ashley whispered, "Okay." The shifts weren't dramatic. Just daily. Subtle. Felt more than seen. Lily started handing me cash at the end of each week. Small amounts, 20s, 10s, crumpled bills pulled from a barista apron, with sticky notes attached. For the water bill. For groceries. For that comment. Still paying it off. One envelope had $150 in it. Her note read, "First payment for that stupid dinner comment. More coming." I didn't need the money, but I kept it not for the amount but for the meaning. Nick did his part too. No grand gestures. Just consistency. He started mowing the lawn without being asked. Paid for his own gas. Took over the Netflix account. Once, he left a pack of my favorite coffee on the counter with a note. "You made things look easy. They weren't. Thanks for everything you did while we didn't see it." Ashley changed in smaller ways. She checked my schedule before making plans. Took my car for service without waiting for a reminder. Started asking me what I needed. A question I hadn't heard in years. There were no apologies. Not really. Just effort. And that was enough. On Thanksgiving, the house was full again. But quieter. Lily helped me cook. Nick cleaned. No one barked orders. No one slouched like a king in a borrowed kingdom. After dinner, we sat around the table. No speeches. Just full plates and slow forks. That's when Nick spoke. I used to think replaceable meant unimportant, he said. But I was wrong. It meant I never appreciated who held us together. No one spoke for a full minute. Ashley looked at me, her eyes glassy but firm. We see it now, she said, and I believed her. That night, back at the apartment, I packed the last of my things. Folded shirts, work boots, the toothbrush I'd kept beside a cracked mirror. I left the keys on the kitchen counter, not as a goodbye to the space, but to the version of myself who lived there. The man who thought love without respect was enough. When I returned home, I wasn't a ghost anymore. I wasn't filler. I was the man who'd drawn the line. The man who taught them, finally, that the center doesn't hold when you treat it like scaffolding. Now they carry their own weight. I still help, but only when asked. I show up, but I don't bend. Family dinners are optional. Love is no longer assumed. Respect is the entry fee. They paid it. Late but with interest. And now I ask you, was I cruel to leave? Or did I finally give them the lesson they needed? Would you have stayed invisible? Or would you have walked out too? Not in anger, but in self-preservation. Tell me. When everything you give becomes expected, and your absence is the only thing that speaks, what would you do? What would you have done in my place?